your mission at the Commerce Department is to create opportunity and competitiveness. And one of the questions that's coming from actually one of the students here, Sanya Javed, the economics third-year students who sent us this question, since we were talking about self-reliance. There she is. So I'm going to read out your question to the Commerce Secretary. While keeping India's emphasis on self-reliance in the backdrop of India's growing industry in the context of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework negotiations, how are the U.S. and India working together to ensure a level playing field for business, promote sustainable development, and issues related to climate and energy security as well?
Yeah, great question. And again, as I said in the beginning, this is an area that I think we need your bright minds to help us. I mean, to meet the challenges of climate change, we are utterly dependent on technologies and innovations that haven't been developed. That is just a fact. So the third pillar, one of the pillars of the IPEF, is decarbonization and infrastructure. And by the way, they're linked. The days of having investments in infrastructure, roads, bridges, ports, et cetera, that aren't sustainable have to be over. Yeah? Have to be over. We have to push ourselves towards clean steel, clean cement, green cement, green steel. And so we have high hopes for that, for the government-to-government contracts and relationships in the IPEF, because if we can agree to a certain set of principles and targets and goals as it relates to sustainability and decarbonization, that will unlock a great deal of innovation as between our countries. And in this regard, I mean, President Biden and Prime Minister Modi are both extremely serious about this, and I think that's important. I can tell you there is a huge interest by U.S. clean tech entrepreneurs, U.S. infrastructure investors, U.S. Green tech investors, solar, hydrogen, et cetera, in India. And that's why I think once we can come to agreement on the negotiated terms of these environmental standards and sustainability standards, it really is going to unlock a lot of innovation and, quite frankly, a lot of capital and investment in India.
Yes, a significant amount of capital, and of course it's good in the long term for the planet as well, not just for India, but for the planet as well. But since we're talking about global headwinds at this point in time, energy, climate, I mean, these are challenges, universal challenges that every government is at this point in time trying to deal with, and further exacerbated on account of the Russia-Ukraine war. Additional headwinds in the form of higher interest rates around the world at this point in time, including in the U.S. As Commerce Secretary, what are you most concerned about?
Yeah. Well, look, as I said, as I think of the unjust invasion by Russia into Ukraine, I will tell you my first thought has nothing to do with the economy and the economic disruption. My first thought is that it is wrong for a country to invade a sovereign country, slaughter its people, and the United States will stand with the Ukrainian people till the end, because that is non-negotiable, and that goes beyond any economic interest. Having said that, as you say, the invasion has wreaked further havoc in our supply chains, and to me just points to more of what we're saying, which is it's time to it's time to continue to look to like-minded allies who do share our values, who believe in a democratic form of government, and do more with, like India, and do more with these countries. And by the way, I will say, as we do that, let's work together to make sure there's opportunities for women and girls in the economy. You asked the question about sustainability. We're talking a lot about jobs being created in India, manufacturing opportunities, supply chain opportunities, all super important. But let's make sure there's opportunity for you to start businesses, run companies, be in those and I think I thought of that as talking about shared values. Let's make that that inclusion and equality It's very important.
Oh, it's absolutely very important. I'm so glad that you're here talking about this issue. And again, this is a universal challenge. Gender parity, or the lack of it, is a universal challenge. It's not an India problem or a US problem. And I think if the World Economic Forum's data is anything to go by, we're actually not making progress. We're backsliding on the issue of gender parity. So as you sit here today, speaking to these young women, speaking to policymakers here in India, as well as your colleagues in the US and other parts of the world as well, when you talk about building back better, how do you make building back better more inclusive and more diverse as well?
Yeah, such a good point. So I think it's a few things. One is making sure everyone has the skills they need to get a good job. Yeah. So as we race towards a more digital economy, that's exciting, but only if you have digital skills. Yeah. So it's exciting to think of the innovation and job creation around artificial intelligence, digitization, decarbonization, but it's scary, actually, if you don't have those skills. So in the United States, we're very focused on this. In fact, as part of IPEF, we launched a digital upskilling initiative. We built a coalition of more than a dozen big U.S. companies who've committed to training 10 million women and girls in the IPEF countries so they have digital skills. We struggle with this in the U.S. and the whole world. You have to have the skills to compete and to get a job. The other thing is childcare. So in the United States, due to COVID, about 1/3 of our childcare centers went out of business. Daycare centers in the U.S. went out of business and have not come back. So the lack of supply of childcare has driven up price of childcare. So affordable childcare is necessary, and you can do that in many different ways. You know, I'm not prescribing a particular way, but affordable, accessible childcare at scale is necessary for women to fully participate in the workforce. So I think making these investments, and you know, they are investments. We, the administration, tried to get the U.S. Congress to make investments in paid leave and child care, public school for every 3-year-old in America. We were not successful, and they were often dubbed as social programs. And I said, these aren't social programs. This is not a social program. This is a business program. This is an investment in enabling workers to be productive, which will enhance our GDP growth and our economy. So I think it's a mind shift about thinking about those investments.
You know, you're absolutely right. How do you get that mindset change going? Because people
get
do
them to run
people
the
do
country.
see it. Yes, exactly. We need more women in decision-making.
But it's true.
Yeah, it is true. But how do you get that shift to happen? Because people still see them as benefits and not as investments.
It's a challenge. Well, apparently the facts don't matter, because every fact, study, data, I mean, the facts are clear, right? Companies that have more diverse management teams are more productive. Companies whose board members include women and more diverse are more profitable, have higher share prices, you know, on and on and on. So we can't necessarily rely on the facts
data,
or the math or the data. So we have to try something else. I think, you know, it's interesting. I don't know if this is true in India, but in the United States, every CEO that I speak with, truly everyone, regardless of the sector, industrial, tech, healthcare, whatever, will tell me one of their top 3 problems is they can't hire fast enough. Yeah, the workforce can't hire fast enough. So and then we have an extraordinarily low unemployment rate in the United States now. It's historically, it's the lowest in decades. Which is a good thing. Yes. But you would think that that would be what it takes. You know, that would be what it takes, which is to say, if you provided child care, women are not working. They're not working where they were pre-pandemic. Not as many are working, not as many are working full time. I talk to CEOs who say, my best engineer in my company is a woman. I want to promote her to vice president. She says she can't take the promotion because there's not adequate child care. So I am, I suppose, somewhat hopeful that this moment of extreme tightness in the labor market will lead people to understand that these are just rational business-enhancing investments. But we've been at it a long time.
No,
so
we have been at it a long time. And I hope we do move the needle on this front. But it's not just childcare. In India specifically, geriatric care is a big issue.
Same.
And the burden, the
Same.
disproportionate burden of that on women
Same.
forces them to opt out.
Yeah, same. We refer to this as the care economy. It is enormously fragmented in the United States, very fragmented, quite fragile, actually. Someone was just saying to me that in India, actually, decades ago, when you had like a very big extended family all being together, in a weird way, it made it easier for women to work because the children got raised with the extended family of everybody around. But then when you have a small nuclear family, the burden falls disproportionately on mom, which is an irony, but it makes sense to me.
Yes, but there were less opportunities then for women,
Yeah.
even though you had more
No
care,
doubt.
more care at home, and of course the patriarchy does kick in as well. But since we're talking about the India-US partnership, is there appetite or ambition for an FTA? Or is that off the table?
At the moment, it is off the table at the moment for a variety of reasons. I think the U.S. Congress has said there is no political appetite for an FTA at the moment. So having said that, my hope is that the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, it is my strong belief that it will prove to be, in many ways, more economically impactful than an FTA. The FTA is what we all know, right? The FTA is, for the past 50 years, the economic arrangement as between countries. But in fact, if you go and study the benefit to both countries in the FTA, there's a lot of downsides. And I think that what the challenge is, maybe someone in this room could figure out, is what's the modern equivalent of the FTA?
Right.
Yeah? What is the modern equivalent of the FTA that is today and tomorrow's economic relationship as between allied countries? And this is what we're trying to figure out in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And if we do it right, and I believe we will, that will unleash orders of magnitude more job creation in both countries than a traditional FTA. Because we're working on supply chain. If we do it right, you should see some big supply chain job creation here and in the United States. Climate-related investments. So in any event, the short answer is no, but I don't think that what we're doing is less than. I think the burden's on us to show that it can be more than. Since
you're talking about replacing the traditional FTA with new economic agreements, new economic partnerships, and looking at this through a different lens, the issue of reciprocity, and I think that becomes the sort of fine balance for sides that are negotiating deals at this point in time. And in an era where there are macroeconomic headwinds, there are domestic compulsions, what's been your experience on the issue of reciprocity and how to deal with it?
Say more. My experience.
People are like, what are you putting for me on the table? And if everyone comes to the table with that approach, inking a mutually beneficial economic agreement becomes harder.
Yeah. Well, it's true, but it is a reality. Yeah, it's a political reality. And, candidly, many free trade agreements didn't work well for U.S. workers, particularly U.S. workers in certain geographies of the United States. And and it's okay that we look out for our workers, and it's okay that you look out for your workers. And I think which is to say, I think that is an appropriate concern, and that's why the task falls to us to figure out how to ink agreements that are reciprocal, that do create value in both countries, or in the case of IPEF, in a multilateral relationship. That's why I'm so excited about, climate and sustainability. We're moving out on trying to move towards a global steel arrangement. That's an example. Traditionally, countries that would overly subsidize the steel industry or have very, very dirty steel, therefore cheap, you would deal with all of that through a tariff, traditional trade agreements. But a global arrangement that preferences cleaner steel, I think, is a benefit for all and the planet at the same time.
When you talk about building back better, stronger, smarter, and more equitably, which is what you're hoping to do in your current role, where do you believe the biggest opportunities lie, and where do you believe the biggest challenge lies as well in being able to do that?
Yeah. Well, I'm optimistic by nature, so I see more opportunity. I see more opportunity. I see the fact that in only the 2 years that President Biden has been president, we have been able to, on a bipartisan basis, pass the biggest investment in United States infrastructure in our country's history. Over $1 trillion to invest in roads, bridges, clean water, et cetera. It's extraordinary. The CHIPS Act you talked about, the climate provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act are unbelievable. And our allies will be able to take advantage of that as well. So all of it presents challenges, right? Like, there's no doubt about that. But the opportunity is that in making those investments, we will be creating millions of jobs. And if we do it right, those jobs will go, as we say in America, go to people who look like America, right? Which is opportunities for everybody. And the roads that we built and the infrastructure we built will be sustainable. And the subsidies for climate will lead to a whole new era of innovation. So it's all fraught with risk. Yeah? We talked about the CHIPS Act. Fraught with risk. Everything I've said is fraught with risk. We could fail in the execution. Those are the downsides. But I think the upside is quite incredible. And I'll say, it's that spirit with which I come to India. When I asked CEOs to come with me, I didn't know how many. Would I get 1, 2, 3, 5? And, they 10 or more get on a plane and they're here. The rest will participate in another way. So we have to hold on to the optimism.
Yes, we do have to hold on to the optimism. So as you leave India, what are the memories that you go back with?
Having my face painted like 7 different colors. No, really, it was so quite special. The minister welcomed me into his whole family in that way. So I will go back with that feeling of warmth. And I will go back, I suppose, rejuvenated in a way by the entrepreneurialism that I see here in India, by the confidence I feel when I'm here on the ground, and by the mutual desire I sense to continue to deepen the U.S.-India relationship on a number of different fronts. That's how I feel.
Well, Gina Raimondo, many, many thanks for joining us here in this conversation. We wish you the very best of luck, and we hope to see you back here.
The best of luck
in India. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the U.S. Commerce Secretary. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.